I'm going to do literally today. I'm literally going to just read from the book, and we're going to do stream of consciousness on Black labor, white wealth. If you want to know where we are in the book club, we are on page 82, and page 82 is really good because it digs into how Blacks were oppressed and how you got to the point where you were kind of stuck a day late and a dollar short when it came to slavery thing. And I see Alfonso's out of Birmingham, Alabama, and I see Bill from Maryland, and we got somebody from the Netherlands, Dr. Anderson. Elvira's in Amsterdam, Timothy's in Columbus, Cersei's in San Diego, Jay is out of Charlotte, North Carolina. I see Kendall out of Harlem, Jermaine out of Camden, New Jersey, and I see him Manhattan from Rhonda and Dover, Delaware for Dennis. So good to see everybody. All right, so let's just jump right into it. Let's cut to the chase. All right, boys, stop all that yapping. All right, so I'm gonna stop my yapping. I'm gonna start my reading. All right, so the page 82 in Black Labor, White Wealth. If you don't have a copy of the book yet, I hope you'll make sure you go get one. You can go to powernomics.com. That's powernomics.com. And I'm gonna read this to Dr. Anderson. I'd like to get his interpretation of this. So, Dr. Anderson, you said here that, and by the way, I didn't even do this, Dr. Anderson. Let me ask you, how are you doing? I didn't even greet you. I got so to the point. I asked you how you were doing privately, but I like to ask you publicly. How you been?
Oh, I've been doing much better. I'm improving inch by inch. And like I guess what they were saying back during the civil rights movement, coming out of the lips of Martin Luther King, we shall overcome someday. I guess I'll be totally out of this someday, okay? So I'm moving closer and closer to a deadline or a finish line.
Well, I would say that we all are. And I think you, what you're doing for where you are in life, the age that you are, I think that's amazing. I know guys that are 30 years younger than you that don't have the energy to do all the things you've done and the contribution you've made. You probably accomplished more in the last 2-3 years than most people accomplish in a lifetime. And so
that's called insanity.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with you. You are a crazy man, but we love you anyway. We love you to death. In fact, it's your craziness that we love the most, I think, and we appreciate you. So let me just start reading. Page 82, Black Labor, White Wealth. It says R.A. Schermerhorn in an article entitled "Power as a Primary Concept in the Study of Minorities" explained how Blacks suffered a double dose of white oppression and exploitation. He hypothesized that the use of power over a less powerful group takes three forms. One, the group with the greater power annihilates the powerless group or drives them out of the territory. Two, the more powerful group dominates the other group from a distance. Or three, the more powerful group brings the weaker group within its own geographic boundaries and efficiently controls it. European whites have used all of these forms of power in varying degrees around the world. For example, the first form was used on American Indians to confiscate their lands. The second form is primarily used by European nations to control natural wealth of Africa. And three, the third form was used to control and exploit Black labor in America. These control methods have secured white Europeans' power over populations and natural resources, limiting the subordinate group's access to the dominant society. Generally, the colonization and oppression of non-Black people were not as severe or prolonged as it was for darker-skinned people. For instance, there was no other racial or ethnic group that was forcibly separated from their indigenous culture and country. The first Blacks entered America in a questionable status aboard a Dutch warship, but shortly thereafter, specific social sanctions were imposed against them by the colony of Maryland. Once the subordinate status of Blacks was established, the plantation society incrementally fine-tuned the slavery system. So, Dr. Anderson, as I read that to you, I'll go ahead and stop and ask you, what goes through your mind as I read your words that you wrote in the Black Labor, White Wealth so many years ago?
Well, it stayed pretty well firmed and locked and fixed. And but even though some of these countries no longer have the kind of power that they used to have, and see, at one time, England was the dominant slaving country on the earth. They were dominating all other countries. They went to war with the Portuguese and the Spanish and the French, fighting for control of the enslavement process around the world. But the British dominated it all the way up to the last moment. And one of the great irony is that when I read these articles in the paper nowadays about a black woman marrying into the British family. I said, everything that the British family got, all the land, they're some of the richest people on the earth. And they still living off of the resources that they took from out of black folks' hides during slavery. And they didn't turn that loose and forward until the last of the 1800s. And they still living well. And the family has never worked. And so I say to myself, so why would black folk be interested in reading about a black woman married into the royal family? And I mean, what's the significance of that? And it's above my head. I never got an answer to it. So if you know an answer to that, fine. But other than that, the British were the dominant enslaving nation up until recent time, not too long ago. After after freedom for blacks, they started giving it up by trying to figure out how to dominate additional countries by building resources in their country and processing raw materials. And they thought somehow that was what enhanced the British colonies, but it didn't. Those colonies pretty well learned how to break away from the British, and now all of them are free except down in South Africa, which controls most of the gold and silver and diamonds in the world. And they fight. Those South Africans are going to fight to the last man to make sure blacks never get that back.
Okay, so what you're saying is that that's funny that you bring up that thing about the royal family. I've always wondered that too. A lot of that wealth. What do you know about the history of the wealth? I read somewhere, Dr. Anderson, that the Queen of England is the wealthiest landowner on earth, that she owns 1.6 billion acres of land or something crazy like that. And a lot of that land, I imagine, came from us, right?
That's right. All of it came from you. All of it. I would say about 95% it came from you, and they picked up a little bit from the Indians, the East Indians, and maybe a little bit from a couple of the Arab countries, but 90% of it, just 98%, 97% of it came from black folk, from the sweat and labor of black folk. Wealth comes from labor, and see, they learned a long time ago. What I'll tell you in a few minutes is that if you control labor, you can control the wealth. You cannot have wealth without labor. Somebody has to work. That's why the Bible, I guess, said one time that you earn your bread by the sweat of your body, by sweating and working. And we somehow never understood that, and that's why we don't understand the whole point of capitalism, or what capitalism is. And so if we want to go back for a second, to go to your point, to answer your point indirectly, the world never placed too much importance on enslaving people based on skin color. And contrary to what you hear these conservatives saying, they're telling some of the biggest lies I've been told. They didn't enslave people based on skin color. They didn't start enslaving people based on skin color, Dr. Watkins, until about 1445 in that general time frame. And that was Henry the Navigator that came in from around the coast of Africa. I think I mentioned this several times on your program before, and where they picked up something like about 16 blacks, and brought them back to Europe and gave them to the Vatican, took them into Italy and gave them to the Vatican, gave them to the Pope. And the Pope said, I don't know what I'm gonna do with them. They said, well, use them for whatever you wanna use them for. So the Pope, from starting about 1445, now this is way before Columbus discovered America. And then they used those blacks as servants until about 1488, when Pope Innocent finally says, I know what I'm gonna do with these things. He said, the Catholics were always sort of the negotiators of slavery every place on the earth. And they were negotiating not because out of humanitarian purposes. The Catholics were always interested in one thing: money and wealth. That's what they were interested in. That's why the Vatican has a storehouse of riches, gold, silver, and all kind of precious minerals. And that was the point of that's how the Italians got into slavery. And that's why, and the Spaniards got into it. They weren't interested in no humanitarian things. They were interested in, after Columbus discovered America, into being able to get land and wealth. And so, to make a long story short, in 1488, prior to that time, if you wanted, anybody could own a slave. Contrary to what you hear these people on the Fox channel talking about everybody's been enslaved, that's a lie. The primary purpose of slavery for black folk is new. It's a new concept it's based on skin color. It was, but prior to that time, that slavery was never really based on skin color. Was there was some incidents where people just wound up being of a different shades, but that, and like the Turks, for instance, or the Mamelukes, they were sort of dark skinned. Why? Because they were right around the Mediterranean border. It goes around from the bottom of the European nations there, and had the Mediterranean Sea there. And on the other side were blacks in Africa, and some of those been crossed over into there. And when they came in a couple of times, like Hannibal and some, they invaded Europe a couple of times and went through Europe and impregnated a lot of and like it's particularly in Spain and Sicily, those islands, and they impregnated, those Africans impregnated a lot of white women back in there, and they started having some darker skinned people, and some of those people wound up being slaves only temporarily, and this should be in the book. I don't, let's see, like the Arabs, see like down there, I did put it in here. See Portugal down there at the bottom, and Spain, Portugal, and all those. Turks, for instance. Turks were the Mamelukes. Turks were the Mamelukes, and a lot of them got brought into Africa, and up to about 12th century, Egypt was the strongest nation in the African continent at that time. Egypt was extremely strong, but the Mamelukes came in, and the Mamelukes and the Turks were extremely vicious, aggressive, forceful warriors. And what they did, they sort of knocked the Egyptians, blacks off the Egyptian thrones. You don't hear that too much about that, but that's who knocked the blacks off the thrones of Egypt. Those Mamelukes, and Mamelukes were people that had a lighter complexion than African blacks, and but then they wound up being enslaved after that, and they were enslaved for about a couple hundred years, 2 centuries. But then finally had a Mameluke revolution, and Mameluke said, we break free, we're going to exterminate everybody, and regardless of skin color. So the Mamelukes broke free, they exterminated everybody. Turks were a hell of a fighters, and that's how, but it still wasn't based on color. Wasn't based on color until later on, way down. That was in the 12th, by like about 12th or 13th century. They didn't start basing this slavery on skin color until about 1888, when the Pope Innocent gave that speech saying, in the future, do not enslave people based on the historical reason you enslave them. 1 was on religion. 2, you enslave them based on whether they were personally indebted to someone. And 3, had been a prisoner of war. Those were the only 3 reasons that people have been enslaved from the beginning of the earth up to that point in time. Now, maybe I'm confusing you in some of these numbers. Let me repeat that. There were only 3 reasons for enslaving people up until that point in time. It was not skin color. It was whether or not you had personal indebtedness to somebody. He can then say, I own you because you owe me. That was 1 reason. 2 was for religious reasons, grounds. They could enslave you for religious or holy wars. 3 was again because of the ability of people to become a prisoner, and they can hold you in slavery. Those were the only 3 reasons until Pope Innocent in 1488 says, in the future, let's not enslave people, but gives Catholics a lot of reasons to go around the world trying to help slaves. Let's do it another way where we can have permanent slaves. Let's base it on skin color. And that was the first time they ever started talking about it. He says, we had some slaves, 16 slaves here in the Vatican for something like 40 years. They were good, hard workers, and they were very humble, and we could use them for anything we wanted. And so after that, the word went out all around the world after that. And everybody started enslaving people. But guess who they went for? They went for the blacks. That was the first time everybody gonna start enslaving blacks. And probably what you found in the book was probably some of the primary nations that were doing all the enslaving, starting first with the British and going all the way down to the last one that probably be the Arabs. And the Arabs were different. The Arabs were the first ones that ever wanted to enslave people of color. but they never were able to infatuate it the way they wanted to initially. They until about 565, or I'm sorry, 765, the Arabs started marching into Africa, looking for blacks so they can enslave them. And they would call this, but they said, but what they used as an excuse for doing it, for invading Africa, they said, what we're going to do, we're going into Africa looking for the 3 G's. Remember I told you before, looking for the 3 G's: God, glory, and gold. Again, so Arabs were the first people to officially start before the Pope made that pronouncement back in later in 1488, that the Arabs had already been enslaving blacks, but they were enslaving them for different reasons. They said they were enslaving them for religion. Again, God, glory, and gold. And they started going into Africa. And later, they kept pursuing Africa, trying to break into Africa because of a guy named Mullah. He had been the king of Ghana and his Songhai Empire. And he had made the foolish mistake of going off into Arab countries with something like about 100,000 people, throwing gold and silver all on the streets to people. And the Arabs got the word and said, let's go to Africa and take it over. And that was starting in about 765. And now they have enslaved over 13 million blacks. 13 million blacks. And on an average, they enslave about a million blacks every 100 years. The Arabs are still enslaving blacks. So they are the longest. Look at that chart I gave you that you gave back 30 years ago. The bottom part, the longest enslaver people have been the Arabs. Arabs have been enslaving black folk now for 1,300 years, and they've enslaved about 13 million black folk. And guess what? And in those black folks, they are still enslaving blacks in Sudan, Ethiopia, and Mauritania. And what they're looking for now is, instead of gold, it's black gold. It was black gold initially when they called blacks slaves black gold. Now they're looking for the oil in the ground. So right now, the Arabs are after Sudan, Ethiopia, and Mauritania to take them over, and so they can get the oil. And yet you got to wonder, why would any black person want to be identified with Arabs? Well, in Afghanistan or any Muslims moving to America, they have never have a taste for black folk. They don't even accept black folk as being of Arab descent, even though you got a lot of blacks there. So at the bottom of that chart, you should see Africa on there, and Arabs. Arabs have been enslaving blacks now for about 1,300 years.
Okay. Well, let me mention this then, Dr. Anderson. And by the way, we're reading Dr. Anderson's book, Black Labor, White Wealth. We're on page 83. And if you want to, we've done a bunch of these meetings. I think we've done about 12 of them now. So if you go to the drboycebookclub.com, you can actually find the recordings of everything that we've done to this point. And so we're doing a deep dive of this book. So anybody that wants to know how this works, we meet every Wednesday night at 8:30. You can sign up at blackkeystogreatness.com. That's blackkeystogreatness.com to come to the book club. Now, to come to the book club, the only thing I ask you to do is make sure you get copies of Dr. Anderson's books. You can go to powernomics.com. That's powernomics.com. And remember, the holidays are coming. Get your family gifts that have value. Don't get them a bunch of nonsense. Get them, I think Powernomics books, Dr. Anderson's bundle pack is a great gift for you to give to other people. We got to start giving each other the gift of knowledge instead of giving each other worthless consumer items that put wealth in the hands of other people. Let's support the things we believe in, but also support our loved ones by giving them knowledge. Okay. So so table 5 on page 83, Dr. Anderson, you rank different countries based on 2 things. One, the harshness of slavery. How harsh was your slavery? And then you rank on duration, like who had slavery the longest, or enslaved blacks the longest. And so with harshness, you said the English were number 1. They were the harshest. Number 2 was the French. Number 3 was the Dutch. Number 4 was the Spanish. Number 5 was the Portuguese. Number 6 was the Arabs. So it seems to me that even though the Arabs had the slaves the longest, they had the least harsh system. And even though the British had the slaves for the shortest amount of time, they were the most harsh. Is there anything you want to add to that chart? Everybody wants to see it's on page 83 of Black Labor, White Wealth. What do you think about that, Dr. Ennis?
Well, in addition to that, see, the little bit of liberalism that came through from the Arabs came through in two ways, Dr. Watkins. One is that they would take a black person with them, a black slave, to war with them as a flunky and as a servant. They would take the blacks with them as a servant to go to war. But in taking them to war, it was for the same reason, the same safety they had with allowing them to be guardians of the harems all throughout Middle East. Most of the high-ranking people got harems. They might have 10 or 20 harems, some of the finest women in the Middle East there. And they had the guards. So guess who they appointed to be the guards? They appointed blacks to be the guards. But the downside of that was you always got to wind up to losing your tools. And so they castrated all the blacks that they slaved into those countries and made them, they castrate them but they made them harems, guards around the harems, so they can be with all those women all day long and all night. But that's as far as they could go. And so that they're still doing that in many of those countries. And even though they use blacks in the wealthy homes. The second point was that while they took them into combat with them, is that those slaves, those blacks were big, burly, strong men, and they could fight and fight you and help you fight your enemy during the daytime, and keep some of these people from killing you. But at night, when things were a little calmer and everybody was resting and quiet, what the Arabs would do, they would use those black men as women. And they would use them. They roll over on him and say that, you're the woman tonight. That's what they was doing for him. So they castrated him. I'm sorry, let me cut you off. Go ahead.
No, I was feeling bad for those poor men. That I was just groaning. Like, oh, that's a rough job.
Yeah. So at night, and when they fought with what you were doing at day, then at night when you were too rested, you performed some tricks for him to make him relax, the male and the white Arab that you were working for. Those Arabs were basically whites, and they still are basically whites. And so they made men into faggots and sissies and fairies, anything they could make them into, as in the military, and in the harems they use them as guards. Those are the additional points, but not as based on race at that point, but the fact that they had them, they're with them, and they brought them out of Africa.
Well, another point you make in your book on page 83 and 84 is it seems like you make a connection between the lightness of the skin of the oppressor and the way they treated their slaves. So if I'm not mistaken, and maybe you can correct me on this, but it seems like on this chart, England, France, and the Dutch, who were very white, treated the slaves the worst. And that the Spanish, Portuguese, and Arabs, who were darker, treated slaves better. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that? I saw that was interesting. I didn't know that was true.
Yeah, but see, to be honest with you, anybody like the Spaniards there? The first Spaniards came out of a mixture of blacks, what I said, and Spanish people that went into Latin America and Central America to try to in search of, again, wealth. They sent about 3 to 4 million black slaves into Mexico and Central America. You know what they're looking for? They had them use them as slaves digging in the mountains and then throughout those areas looking for gold, silver, and precious metals. That's what the blacks were doing in Mexico. And so originally, the first Mexicans, Hispanics, all of them had black in them. All of them except the ones that came here initially. After that, all of them had blacks. To the present time, you were to go down to Mexico right now and go down around Central America and go down into those Latin American countries, you'll find that they still got that ranking order of social skin color acceptance. And that light and whiteness is still on top. And right now, they still treat blacks in Mexico and any place in Central America, Panama, any place you go down there, the darker blacks are still on the bottom. And even down in Brazil, that's why all elected officials, you find that ever get any kind of, oh, my wife will give me, tell me, she's waving on me, she threw me off my point now. But throughout, all the way down to Brazil, that the elected officials always be light skinned or they be just somebody other than blacks. You've never seen a black president of Brazil, all those southern countries, or all the way down all the way through South America. They still got extremely rigid caste systems based on skin color in those societies. That's like Cuba. Cuba was the most racist colony in the Caribbean. Puerto Rico was not Puerto Rico, but Cubans were. And that's what Castro was, once one of Castro's bones was stuck in his throat, that the darker skinned blacks were still on the bottom, and 80% of the population was blacks. But all the elected officials and people who had businesses were light skinned. And the Cubans had a word for that. It's called Castilian, Dr. Watkins. So when a Cuban said that we are Castilians, they're saying we don't have one drop of black blood in us. And so I like Puerto Rico, and some of these other places got black blood in them, and that's why that's why we are not that's why we don't use the word Latino or anything like that. That's why they decided finally to start using the word Hispanic again, because Hispanic was an European word that meant no blood infusion with black folk. That's what I want you to know. That's the point. So when you hear people talking about they're Hispanic now, what they're claiming is that they have no black blood and no association, identification with black people, period.
Well, Dr. Ensign, let me ask you. Now, I know your wife, you mentioned your wife said you had 30 minutes with us, and we're approaching 28 minutes. Do you got to go? It's okay if you got to go.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
All right. Well, I'd like to read on page 84 on Black Labor, White Wealth. And everybody that's listening online, I'm going to shut the online part down in a minute. You can actually go to blackkeystogreatness.com if you'd like to join us in the book club. And we do this every single week. So the URL is blackkeystogreatness.com. So feel free to join us in the book club. I may have to shut this feed down in a minute. But you said here on page 84 in Black Labor, White Wealth that you mentioned Black resistance against enslavement. And I want to read this because a lot of us learn about slavery, but we get the happy slave narrative, and we don't get to hear about those of our people that really fall back. And I think that's important. So I'm going to read this. You said here, many West African Blacks resisted enslavement, though they were confronted by the collective military and economic might of Portugal, Spain, Germany, England, and Arab nations. Of the estimated 35 to 50 million Blacks that were captured for shipment out of Africa, 2/3 never reached the slave markets. So 2/3 out of 35 to 50 million. So millions, the majority never even got here. Now that's interesting. Most were killed resisting their captors or succumbed to the inhumane conditions of the slave ships. Some committed suicide. Contrary to the image of the happy slave, many physically mutilated themselves in order to reduce their market value or killed their own offspring to spare them the ordeal of enslavement. Others died from new diseases, overwork, and unhealthy living conditions. Some were killed by other slaves or whites for the most trivial of reasons. Slave rebellions tended to be less drastic. For instance, some rebel slaves simply impeded the work process by breaking work tools, feigning illness, running away, and refusing to work. Some sought their freedom and revenge by setting fires to plantation buildings and the master's houses. There were so many incidents of poisoning that many states passed laws prohibiting Blacks from working in and around drugstores or supplies. Though it was a capital offense for Blacks to defend themselves or strike a white person, there were about 150 to 200 organized slave rebellions. Unlike the Indians or the Mamelukes, Blacks eventually accepted slavery and complied with societal laws that forbade self-defense, insurrection, and attempts to escape. They acquiesced, then appealed to white conscience and morality in hopes of getting whites to end slavery. Even today, Blacks use the same technique, trying to overcome the legacies of white racism, abuse, and exploitation. It is clear that new methods must be employed. Most Black appeals to the moral conscience of white society have fallen on deaf ears. John Locke, a prominent philosopher, summarized many whites' feelings about the plight of Blacks when he said that an abused or enslaved man had the moral obligation to take up arms in defense of his own freedom. even if it meant his death. In short, it is not white society's responsibility to be both the exploiter and the savior of Black people. Can I get an amen to everybody in the audience on that last sentence? It is not white society's responsibility to be both the exploiter and the savior of white people. Dr. Anderson, please take over. Thank you for this paragraph.
Okay, that was a big paragraph where you read. Okay.
Yeah, I got into it. I was pumped up. It's crazy. We think white people gonna save us, and they're the one who locked you up in the first place. That's the craziest thing I've ever seen. Go ahead, Dr. Anderson, please.
Okay, thank you. Let me try to wrap it as fast as I can, because see, what I've said to Black folk in over 60 years, all the way back to the Civil Rights Movement, is that you have to understand that Black folk right now don't have they don't have the commitment right now to free themselves. They've always had the capabilities to be able to do it if they wanted to, but I told you they won't do it. And the best example I could give to you, I told you about in Korea, the difference between soldiers who would fight during the day and fight all night, again, against the Chinese, the Russians, and the North Koreans that were coming over the hills every morning, blowing horns and shooting rockets and bullets. And we would have soldiers that we later on call them turncoats, some called turncoats, and some of them just chicken out. But you go out there in the morning and then you hear the bugles blowing, and then you hear boom now, and then half the damn buildings go, and you say, what all that? And you say, they're coming. And you go outside and you say, now they're shooting like crazy, and you got to run low and keep low. And all of a sudden, the bullets are hitting the wall and bouncing off. And you look down, you see some of your soldiers on your team, your American teams, and they be laying down in a gully or hide behind a tree or a brick wall, and they be laying on their rifle, or have a rifle just laying down beside them. And you go up and say, hey, get up, get your ass up and start shooting, fighting back. You know what they would tell you then? Dr. Anderson, you got to be crazy, because if I shoot back, that might make them mad. See, and so you have to figure out. So you got to be. It's a twisted logic that they use. They said and they use the same thing with whites. When you ask Black folk, why don't you get up and fight back? They can't figure out. No, that if I don't agree with whites and what they want to do, or if I don't go request permission from them to do it, if I'm going to march and demonstrate, I better go downtown and ask white folk, can I get a pass or permit to demonstrate? Now, so don't make me laugh now, Dr. Watkins, but this is the silliness of it, and don't make me laugh. So they say, well, white said, no, I don't want you to. You can't give a permit. Well, yes, sir. I'll make sure I don't go. I'll make sure I don't be caught parading or marching. And so the logic never made any sense to me. But that's inappropriate behavior. Inappropriate, and Blacks have always been labeled with a burden, I should say, with inappropriate behavior patterns, where they would do things against themselves. That's why I told Black folk from day one that slavery could not have lasted 2 months in America, Dr. Watkins. If one thing had happened, guess what it is? I know you probably not, and that's not fair to ask you that, because I wouldn't expect you to know that, but I'll have to ask you just so I really want your audience to hear the question. Is that if African nations had been so great during the period up to the 12th century, where they were the major elements all over Africa in terms of inventing things and creating things and running countries and building pyramids and building things and stuff, is that if they can build all those things, all they had to do was build a few boats and sail to America. And at that time, until about 1766, Black folk made up 50% of the population of the United States. All they needed was the Indians to join them, and to be able to help them. They could run the whites back to Europe. And so the Continental Congress sent letters, and they even sent Benjamin Franklin and a couple other people to Europe to tell the European societies, do not send any more white people to America, because right now, if the Blacks get together with the Indians, they could run us off this damn continent tomorrow, because we couldn't stop them. They outnumber us and they were outfighters. And so if black folk had to send boats to get their own people back, like any other country would, like we will in combat, when the Marine Corps said, we're gonna bring back every man, every piece of equipment all the way home. And that's what they did. And every time we had a fight, they would go around and pick up the bodies to make sure all the bodies, that even if they were dead, they were taking them back. And we had people like the Red Ball Express, where black guys were driving the trucks, pick up all the bodies and take them back for proper burials. Everybody would come get their people except black folk, as I said, because they're laying on their gun and hiding. They never stood up to white folk. And so what white folks formed, again, by the 1500s, by somewhere around about 1510 or 1515, they developed a new philosophy, says, basically, we're gonna all enslave these black folk and double team them, and all those people you saw in that rank and order all went all around the world, started enslaving black folk, because they said black folk are weak people. You're weak people, you're scared people, you can't fight, you won't fight. That's why the Tuskegee Airmen had such a hard time. Nobody thought blacks would fight, because they said nobody in their right mind would let somebody enslave them for 465 years. And they would keep saying, we shall overcome someday. And see that, and every time you see black folks marching and parading down the street, whether it's a Black Lives Matter or whoever they are, the whites say, if you're that damn scared that you got to walk down the street, and that's all you can do is march and pray and sing, then you're weak people and you're scared people, and you're not ready to fight and survive. And that's what they say. They say black folk are weak people, and that anytime they see them marching, parading, and singing it, they said that's why they need to be enslaved, because they're weak ass people. They're not like the Mamelukes, who say that we break free. The Mameluke says we get free, we get break up, we're gonna massacre everybody. And so they massacred everybody they could find in the countryside. Black folk have never attacked their attackers. They've never done that. They had a chance to say they could have sailed across the ocean in boats at any time and come to America. They could have ended slavery. But yet you have to recognize, well, why didn't they do it? They didn't do it because they were scared. They didn't do it because the countries over there, you had all those people that made up almost 25% of the world's population, and none of them would come pick up their people. And then see, in the Marine Corps, that was an insult to send our people into war in North Korea, and then when they get shot or hurt or injured or killed, you don't even go pick them up and go get them if they were alive, and let them stay in captivity. That's why we had over 7,000, Dr. Watkins. And at the end of the Korean War, we had over 7,000 POWs, prisoner of war, Americans and a mixture of Americans and international troops still in captivity in North Korea and in China, in POW camps. And they were being brainwashed to be against their own army and troops in the United States, because again, they didn't have the backbone and spirit. There's an old saying that came out of my earlier studies in imprisonments, is that you cannot, it is impossible in theory and practice to enslave any group of people that says, I will die first before I let you enslave me, and I'll take you, your wife, your children, your dogs, and your house, and everybody else with me. You understand my point? You say, I'll take everything, and when I get through, you try to enslave me, everything's gonna disappear.
Well, I think that's I mean, that's really a word that I think we have to kind of make sure we all internalize that, because it's in such contradiction to the way we get congratulated for being so peaceful, so forgiving, right, and all this other stuff.
Compromising, acquiescing, butt kissing, chicken licking, finger licking, anything, and we take pride, and those are the models we have. Black folk who go and get a good education, aspire to get the top education training they can get, so they can do what? Go back to get a job in a white community working for a white company. You said, why aren't you going back to your own community with your own people and building your own company, producing your own products, and being competitive and keeping your money with your own people? Well, Dr. Nelson, we all are children of God. We gotta take care of everybody. That's why right now there'll be blacks out there waving as the Afghanistan's come into this country. They'll be out there waiting for the airplanes to come in. They don't know that all those people coming to America are coming here to replace them, to overrule them, to subordinate them based on skin color. All those people being brought into this country, what they call Hispanics. I just told you about why they call Hispanics, Afghanistan's or Vietnamese or Philippines, or whatever you want to call them. They are passing as whites. They're all classified as white. The federal registry classified them as whites. The only people in this country that's classified as blacks are blacks. And when black folks run out and try to help all these other people like women groups and gay groups and everything, they think that what they are doing is showing their compassion, their humanitarianism. But guess what? Those people in their mind, from my studies, they're showing that they say, y'all some stupid people. Y'all some stupid asses. We're coming here to get what you can't get. And you out here running out here waving us in and saying, come on, come on. I'm going down there, make sure you got some clothes and money. Come on, get on welfare, come on. And those people, I've done this. Like I said, when I was president and governors and I did research, and when I ran campaigns, they said, Dr. Elson, they are some dumbasses. They said, they're not compassionate. They think they're being compassionate, but we're here to take them out. And there are 3 books right now that are very popular in the Hispanic community. They said black folks' days are over in this country. That's why we're gonna knock them out of second place as citizens in the year 2000. And by 214, they're gonna be permanent underclasses. And by 240, when the Asians and the Arabs get together, they're gonna be 4th-class citizens. And they said, because you all are dumb. You're the only one who want to save everybody. You don't see the Jews running out trying to save the Baptists and the Catholics and the Mormons. Nobody does. You see Indians coming off the reservation, running around trying to make room for everybody. Did you see the Indians out there waving the Afghanistan's in? It is embarrassing to me. And I've been embarrassed for 60 years fighting this fight. But I'm just about, as I said, I'm about ready to throw my hands up and surrender too. And lay on my damn gun.
Well, don't lay on your gun, Dr. Anderson. I think that I know you've woken up a lot of people, and actually everybody. I think that we just finished chapter 4 in Black Labor, White Wealth. We're on page 86, and I'm thinking rather than even beginning into chapter 5, which is going to be a great chapter. The title of the chapter is Why Blacks Cannot Emulate Ethnic Immigrants. Rather than beginning, I think that really continuing and finishing on this note is a good move. And so I want everybody to know that we meet for this book club every Wednesday night at 8:30. You can sign up if you haven't joined. You can also get access to the life class by going to blackkeystogreatness.com. That's blackkeystogreatness.com. Somebody please type that in the chat so other people can see it. Also, Dr. Anderson is coming to the All Black National Convention, where we are gathering to formulate solutions and plans and policies for our people in every area, from health and relations to health, relationships, politics, economics, everything, family structure. We've got about 40 experts. Dr. Anderson is one of several. Nuri Muhammad, John Boyd is actually all of 9 of his children run a business together, and they're world famous now as performers. Okay. And they're going to teach the Black family plan, how they did their sense of family. So we're going to talk about growing your own food, all these things that people need to know if you're trying to get off the grid, get out of the system. So Dr. Anderson, and before I remind everybody about powernomics.com, did you have any thoughts? Because it sounds like your wife is letting you know your time's up. Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've been giving her hell all day about how I didn't feel that well going to a doctor again. But the bottom line of what I was saying, let me embed it into their minds. Let me embed it this way. It's saying that slavery would not have lasted 2 months if all the African nations had, at that time, they made up something like maybe about, somewhere around 30% of the world's population. If they had just made their boats and sail right across the Atlantic Ocean and rescue their people. Nobody would let you take 10 or 12 or 15 million people out of their country and kill them off and hold them there in slavery for all those hundreds of centuries, and you don't do a damn thing about it, don't even go get them. And that's why whites said it, because they're that dumb. They should be enslaved. They should stay in slavery. And what I say is, as I said, as a pilot, is that if they get on my plane, I'm flying, and I'm behind the stick, and we lose cabin pressure for any reason, at night, if we over 10,000 feet, lose cabin pressure, or we in the daytime we get over 30,000, we lose pressure. I said automatically there a padded panel will open above your head, and when that panel open, an out pumps will come out a mask, an oxygen mask, and when you while we are lacking oxygen, you put that mask on yourself, and don't try to put it on your neighbor, somebody sitting beside you. Don't try to put it by somebody across from you or behind you, any place else. You put it on yourself first. You can't help anybody else on the plane if you don't have any oxygen. So but don't be like half the blacks right now like they did back in 1400, in 14th and 15th centuries. Jump up saying, I'm black. Anybody out there need an oxygen mask? Any poor people, any people of color, minorities, or any blue collar workers, any gay midgets, any one-eyed people, one-toed, one-leg, peg leg, who needs a mask? And I would say, sit your ass down and put it on yourself first. And that's all I say to you right now is to solve the question, answer the question you asked me. We could have done it, we haven't done it. And they said, no, it's inexcusable that a group of people of a certain color complexion has been able to allow somebody to enslave them and subordinate them, exploit them, misuse them, abuse them, exclude them, and displace them for 465 years. They still saying, I belong to the Democratic Party and Republican Party, when neither party's ever done a damn thing for them. They've never had not one white politician in the history of this nation who's ever come out and says, I'm gonna do this strictly and solely for black folk, to take the legacies of slavery off their backs and shoulders as mandated by the 13th, 14th, and the 15th Amendment and the Civil Rights Laws of 1865. Not one has ever done it. And the one black president we had, even he didn't do it. And now he's a model because white folks say, hey, if Obama didn't do a damn thing for y'all, why should I do anything?
All right. Well, I think that's a good note to finish tonight's meeting. Don't forget, if you want to log in at blackkeystogreatness.com, not only can you come to the book club for free, but also there's a whole life class, a Black Excellence life class that I put in there for you guys that want to get good at time management and everything else, setting goals, overcoming obstacles. We got to build a better black man, build a better black woman. And so that was the goal. And we put this together for you. It's totally free at blackkeystogreatness.com. And also the allblacknationalconvention.com is where you can learn about the convention. Dr. Anderson will be there along with a lot of great, intelligent black people that are there to solve problems. So we hope you'll fly your family, your church group, your investment club down to Orlando. We're still open for volunteers, open for vendors, open for corporate sponsors. If you black sponsors, black owned businesses, we don't let any of the mainstream corporations sponsor anything. But if you have a black owned business, you want to be a sponsor, we have sponsorship slots that are available. The Black Business School is the primary sponsor of all of this. Lastly, Dr. Anderson's books. Everybody, I'm asking you, I'm being very direct and asking you to consider going to powernomics.com and buying the bundle pack for your family for Christmas. A lot of y'all already own the books. A lot of y'all are reading the books. I think that's great. But now it's each one, teach one. Black economics needs to become the second religion. Powernomics was referred to, I think, by Ebony Magazine, if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Anderson, as the economic Bible for black people. So the same way we got a Christian Bible, we got the Muslim version of the Bible, the Quran. We need an economic Bible, and I nominate Powernomics and books like Black Labor, White Wealth as our economic Bibles. So I hope you will consider going to powernomics.com and ordering those books now before the holiday season hits and it gets real busy, and ordering and giving them away to your relatives. Because at the All Black National Convention, all of our VIP guests, or a big chunk of them, I think the people that get certain passes are all going to get free copies of Powernomics. At my wedding, I gave away copies of Powernomics, and I did that because I don't want to give you something stupid. I want to give you something that's worthless. I want to give you something that's going to make your life better, and I encourage you to embrace these principles, because that's what's going to make things better for you and your family and for our community. So, Dr. Anderson, I want to say thank you very much for an excellent conversation. I appreciate it.
But thank you, and I saw a few comments from some of your listeners, and they said some nice things about both of us. And tell them I appreciate that and I love them for it. And one of my greatest weakness on this earth, besides the physical things and the medical problems I might be having, is my love and compassion for black folk. I just hate for people to beat up on black folk. And all my life, since I was a little boy, I always loved black folk. I love the camaraderie, the communities, and things that we used to do when we used to be with each other. And I wish we could go back and rebuild these communities that I suggest to you, because that's your only hope. Without a community, and without a sense of community and an economy in it, where you're buying and supporting your own people with your own products, services, and goods, you won't make it. And right now, as I said to you, many years back, we got a major economy, a downsizing coming up. We're gonna have a big economic drop. And that's gonna do it. And I told you when I talked about the 4 horses of the apocalypse, remember that? And I said the last horse is gonna be the black horse. After I went through what every horse was for, from everything from the brown horse to the white horse, to the red horse, to the black horse. And the black horse comes through, and the black horse is here now. And when the black horse shows up, just like it does in the Bible, that we're gonna have viruses up to goo-gobs, all kind of viruses, and alternatives to those viruses. And you're gonna also have, following those viruses, you're gonna have water shortages and food shortages. They are coming. And right now we have a lot of starving people. And I told blacks a long time ago, prepare to take care of yourself. Put the mask on yourself. Quit going around. If you see anybody spending all their time trying to save minorities and poor folk and people of color, I want you to go into business making some signs saying, I is a member of a stupid group, and stick it on the bumper of their car. And please don't put black on it, because I don't want to be, I'm black and I love being black. But that's what they need. They need some bumper stickers saying, I is stupid. And say it like that, I is stupid. I still love the Democratic Party better than I love my own people. I love the Republican Party better than my own people. And Democrats have enslaved black. They were the first people to enslave blacks. Mm. They've been enslaving black folks for the first, up until 1860s. It was the Democrats. Republicans tried to help black folk, a few radical ones, not all the Republicans, just a very few. They helped them for 10 years and it lasted for about 20. Then by that time, the Democrats had taken them over again. And you're right back now. And that's why Biden could have helped these blacks start a railroad line, that bullet train running from South Carolina to the west out to California. So he's putting up, giving $81 billion, not trillion, $81 billion to the good old boys and the Amtrak. And not one time in history has black folk ever owned any infrastructure. And now he's going to put that button, and then he's going to tell y'all, come out here and vote again, so we can keep running the government. I wouldn't vote for a damn Democrat or a Republican for any reason. I would vote for a black party. That's why in the Powernomics book I said, get yourself a national black party, and that way tell all the other people, and you vote as a block, and you tell the entire nation, and you tell, and all those people overseas will go with you too, and say we will vote for whoever, regardless of color, pink, yellow, green, or polka dot. We will vote for whoever promises the most and delivers the most to black people in America, not to anybody else, not to short, tall, Afghanistan, midgets, humpbacks, any other body. Just that. They don't do that, say I'm not voting anymore. And I ran campaigns for governors and presidents and all the rest of them. I have a say, and I don't hold back on this, I probably ran more damn campaigns than any other black person I can think in America. Okay, and I was been at the highest levels in state politics and federal politics. And that's the way the game is played. Play the game to win. Don't play just to play and lose every damn time. Take care of it. I love you. And tell your people I'll look to hear from them, and tell them to buy those books and make their friends buy them, and make those book selection committees in every state. Start putting some of those damn books into the schools so black kids have a snowball's chance at least to be able to survive. Okay?
All right.
I love you now.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anderson. And I'll let you go ahead and go and tell Mrs. Anderson and everybody I said hello. Okay. All right. So everybody, real quick, just as a quick mandate, I want us to make sure that we have some marching orders as we leave this week's book club meeting. Don't forget, you can go to blackkeystogreatness.com and log in and get access to our Wednesday meetings every night, or every Wednesday night at 8:30. That's when we meet for the book club. In case you're new, that's what we do. If you want to see all the recordings of every book club lecture we've done to this point, I think we're up to about maybe 10 to 15. We're adding every week. you can go to drboycebookclub.com. There's drboycebookclub.com. There is a small fee, and that's because we're raising money in the Black Business School, because we're going to buy buildings and land and property and expand. That's where that money's going. Plus, the All Black National Convention is going to cost somewhere around $100,000 or so. We kept the cost down, but this came from the Black community, and we're getting this done. And we have 40 experts of all different fields, for everything from health to relationships to wealth to everything crypto. We got crypto experts coming by. We have medical experts coming in to talk about the jab. You know what I'm talking about? We've got people coming in that are experts on educating children. We have a whole curriculum for children. We're also going to have some fun. We're going to have a B1 ball and an awards ceremony and all these things. What we're doing is we're developing infrastructure. We're developing infrastructure. You see, and this is something we have the talent to do. Black people are the smartest, most well-trained, most highly educated group of people ever, in my view. And we've got some really smart people in our community who just have to be reconditioned to say, instead of me bringing my best and my greatest intellect to build things for them, I'm going to bring that back and build things for us. So we're calling on all the teachers and the doctors and the engineers and the lawyers and the therapists and everybody else to come down to Orlando. It's the weekend of October 29th through November 1st. And we're going to spend 4 days. It's going to be 4 days of clear, unapologetic Blackness, but not no just radical rah-rah stuff, but literal problem solving, bringing people together, forming solutions, talking about families. John Boyd, who's the father of Victory Boyd, she's in the news. She's a Rock Nation singer. She's such a great singer. Jay-Z heard her sing one time and signed her on the spot. That's how great she is. Well, their whole family, there's 9 of them. They all work together as a family, and they formed a group called Infinity Song. And John, I asked him, I said, how did you get your whole family, 9 kids, to all work together to form a business together and to get along? A lot of families I know can't even work together. They lose a lot of wealth and a lot of opportunity because they can't get along. Well, he said, I have a whole plan. I have a whole blueprint for how you structure your family in that way. And I said, would you teach that at the convention? So we're not just talking about, the standard stuff. We're digging deep into every single thing that has harmed the community, every single thing that has drained wealth. We're talking about therapy. We got therapists coming down. We're talking about marriages failing and the trillions of dollars we lose just from our relationships falling apart. All that baby mama, baby daddy stuff, that's very expensive. That costs your family. It costs your community. It traumatizes your children. So we're just there to solve problems. We are the think tank. We are the brain trust. And that's what it is. So go to allblacknationalconvention.com if you want to go take a look. You have 1 more week to get your hotel at a discount. It's at the Omni Resort. It's a beautiful place. You can bring your whole family. We have all kinds of stuff for your kids. It's right down the street from Disneyland. So it's great for individuals, couples, families, all that. We're even doing things for couples like speed dating and speed networking. And then we're doing cryptocurrency and stock market investing, how to grow your own food, how to shoot a gun, how to build wealth, just everything in between. So allblacknationalconvention.com. That's my pitch. I'm gonna keep giving it because we're really trying to do this thing. And if you are in alignment with what I just said, I beg you publicly, if you could please share this and tell as many people as you can. We don't have that corporate backing. We don't have mainstream media having our back. We just got y'all, right? So I'm asking you to consciously and directly take some part in helping to distribute the messages from the platform, let them know what we got going on, bring in the people that are looking for solutions to come down to Orlando with us and be a part of this, okay? So anyway, last but not least, use that hashtag B1. Tell us what you're doing. Remember, we're not just here to yap and talk. We're here to do things, right? So I want to know what you're doing. I want to know about your business. I want to know about your family, how you're raising your kids. If you got a 5-year-old that's learned, how to buy stocks, use the hashtag B1. Do a little video with your child or a picture or a statement or anything about what you're doing with your kids, and use the hashtag B1. Use it on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And then everyone who wants to be part of that community, click on the hashtag and congratulate and support and encourage everybody who's doing it right. Everybody who's, if you love a Black woman, hashtag B1, talk about how great your wife is. If you are raising your son to be a leader, hashtag B1, show how great of a leader your son is. You have a Black-owned business, hashtag B1, tell everybody about your business. You got to advertise anyway, right? Do these things so that we can remain connected, so we can really do this. We have the solution. The solution's there. Ain't nothing to it but to do it. Okay. All right. So speaking of doing it, I'm about to get up and go. Health is wealth. My wife is waiting on me to take my big fat butt out to go running. Well, I'm not as fat as I used to be because I've been running every couple of days. So I'm gonna go do my run. So it was great to see everybody. God bless you. Please have a good evening. And I will see you guys very, very soon. You hear from me every day. You will hear